Hello, I am Stephanie Joy, the attorney at All Things Social Security and Joy Disability Law. Your video is about to start. I just wanted to remind you that if you click the join button below, you can learn more about the memberships offered at a very affordable price that can give you a little more direct attorney answers to your questions. Have a great day and enjoy the video. Hey, so I love it when someone asks what an acronym is that I may have used. I may have said the entire word or just used the acronym. That's because these things are just everyday language in my world, but I definitely understand that sometimes they're not going to be in yours, particularly if you haven't been doing this long, have not been a claimant for long. Okay, so big shout out. Thank you to Royce. Royce, thank you for asking what an RFC is. Okay. So the way I put it simply is RFC, which stands for residual functional capacity, it's an assessment done by the SSA to determine what your residual functional capacity is after consideration of all the limitations from medically determinable impairments that they find in your evidence, whether it's your medical evidence combined with your function report, that kind of thing, or other evidence. So I'm going to post a link to the SSA page where they define it and describe it. And let's just go into that for a minute here. The definition under the SSA page, okay, is the RFC assessment. It describes what an individual is able to do despite functional limitations resulting from medically determinable impairment or impairments and impairment-related symptoms, and it is an administrative determination of an individual's, excuse me, capacity to perform work-related physical and mental activities. They also include in that definition the notation that it's based primarily on medical evidence, but may also include observation or description of limitations, lay evidence, including your own statement, meaning you, the claimant. So that's when we say there's medical evidence and then there's this other non-medical evidence. They can consider that. Now, granted, we all know that medical evidence is going to be the foundation of any RFC finding. So the other may be gravy or frosting, depending on how you look at it, but it's going to be things that you want to be seen in your medical evidence. Diagnostics are very, very huge. In the event you have an articulating medical professional, as opposed to a robot who actually articulates what they know are some functional limitations of the kind that are relevant to day-to-day activities, which are often corresponding to activities you would have to be able to do or tasks you would have to be able to do in the workplace. So let's go down a little bit further. I always point out the RFC is going to be one of the steps in the sequential evaluation process. It will happen at step 3 after they've decided whether your diagnoses and medical records constitute a listing level impairment. Okay, so if it was a listing level impairment at the earlier part of step 3, they don't have to go on to assessing you in RFC and making that determination of what you can do despite, because you would have prevailed at the beginning of step 3. Okay, so they go on to say more specifically, an RFC is required in all disability determinations where a medical decision is necessary, and the individual has a severe impairment or multiple non-severe impairments, which in combination are severe. So those are just 2 other additional points I'll just mention briefly here. You can't get to an RFC until you have proven that you have a severe impairment. You know, we prove our impairments, then we have to prove they are severe. Then they get to, once it's severe, and it could be one of them, multitude of them, or in combination, sometimes something that's not severe, but in combination with that other thing you can't do, or that other impairment you have, the situation is now severe. Severe combination of impairments. Yeah. So they go on to say the impairment already does not meet or equal the listing of impairments. I described this before. If you're at the beginning of step 3, that they're performing step 3 on your case, you actually don't have any idea when that is. And you don't meet that listing at the early part of step 3, that's where they go on to the later part of step 3, which is assessing your residual functional capacity. And they go on to say, a determination of ability to perform substantial gainful activity is required. I'm trying to get it after the parentheses here. Or an otherwise not severe impairment precludes past relevant work because of the unique features of that work. So that's an interesting little point out they make. If you have a non-severe impairment that would allow for jobs in and of itself, but it precludes your past relevant work, and your past relevant work will implicate, say, the grids for those 50 and older. That is a situation where they would do the RFC. And they add on that at each adjudicative level, this will occur. So it occurs on initial, it occurs on reconsideration, it occurs at the ALJ level. So once you have your hearing, the ALJ is going to be determining your RFC there also before he or she makes a decision. They note that since a claimant is entitled to a new determination at each decision-making level, a new RFC assessment must be made independent of prior RFC assessments. This is really important. This is how we often overturn an initial denial on recon or a recon denial at ALJ. They can't just take the RFC that was decided initially, right? The first few months of your claim and then embrace it in the next one. Do they know what that RFC was? I'm pretty sure they do, but they have to make an independent examination. And that's even true if you do not have new medical evidence. However, it is going to be so important that you have continued to treat. If you didn't have current diagnostics, go get them. If you were, if physical therapy might be something that should be considered, maybe you start, because these things are all going to provide additional medical evidence that can be considered for a different RFC. It's where if you didn't realize on initial because you hadn't learned much about the process, and now you know that, gee, if I had just had medical workup for my arthritis in my fingers to prove that I couldn't do that secretarial job they said I could do, because I can't type that much anymore, this may have changed. So then you go get that evidence, make it follow up. Don't just do a one-hit wonder. Be serious about it. And that evidence will then be on recon. And that new RFC will have to have some notation of the limitations with the fingers. So all this can assist in getting you closer to a 1. It might take you all the way to ALJ. It often does. But that's what it's all about, guys. The RFC, it is the single most important probably aspect of your case. Okay, so RFC is super important. I will talk to you later. I hope that helped, Royce. Bye-bye now.